Commission General Regulations for adoption, for possible adoption. Commission General Regulation 463, duties of person transporting vessel or conveyance, LCB file number R09316. Wildlife Staff Specialist Karen Vargas for possible action. The Commission will consider amending Chapter 488 of the Nevada Administrative Code. The change amends Chapter 488 of NAC by adding a new section that requires the owner, operator, or person in control of any vessel or conveyance that is launched on any body of water in this state to drain the water from the vessel or conveyance and any equipment on the vessel or conveyance, and also requires the owner, operator, or person in control of a vessel or conveyance that is transported on a public road in this state or has been taken out of any body of water in this state ensure that the drain plugs, drain valves, and any other devices used to control the draining of water remain open while transporting the vessel or conveyance on public roads in this state. The proposed regulation also amends language in NAC 488.520 to accommodate the changes above and remove repetitive language. The Commission held a workshop on September 23rd, 2016, and no changes were recommended by the Commission. Ms. Vargas.
Good afternoon. Karen, for the record, Karen Vargas, Nevada Department of Wildlife Staff Specialist, Aquatic Invasive Species Coordinator. Basically, in a nutshell, what we're looking for is a regulation that will require watercraft users and construction material, things like that, that have drain plugs or water that come out of any body of water that have devices that hold back water for those to be pulled basically when they're in transport on a public highway. The reason being is that backwater, of course, holds or can hold plant material, fragments of plant seeds, things like quagga mussel larvae, things like that we can't even see. They go to another lake, they dump that into that, they introduce it into another lake. It's a fairly simple regulation, although it doesn't sound that way when you read it, but it's basically just requiring that people pull their drain plug and drain live wells, ballast tanks. And it has the support of pretty much all the western states, and WAFWA had a resolution in July, I believe, that also recommended that this go through, and various other states also have approved this drain plug rule, what we call a drain plug rule. It's a little bit more intense, but that's about all I have. Any questions for me?
Any questions for Ms. Vargas? Seeing none, this is an action item. I will take it out to public comment in Las Vegas.
No public comments in Las Vegas. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Public comment in Carson City. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the Commission for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd move to approve Commission General Regulation 463, duties of person transporting vessel or conveyance, LCB file number R093-16 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Johnson and a second by Commissioner McNinch to approve Commission General Regulation 463, LCB file R093-16 as presented. Any questions on the motion? Seeing none, I'll call for the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously 9-0. Part B, Commission General Regulation 471, Truckee River Motorized Vessel Closure, LCB file number R139-16, Chief Game Warden Tyler Turnipseed for possible action. The Commission will consider adopting an amendment to Chapter 488 of the Nevada Administrative Code. Existing regulations set forth certain bodies of water on which only vessels without motors are allowed, and certain bodies of water on which only vessels without motors and vessels powered by electric motors are allowed. This regulation adds to the list of waters with such a restriction the Truckee River from the California-Nevada state line to the point where the river enters the Pyramid Lake Indian Reservation. This regulation also extends the exception to the restrictions to all such specified waters and to any vessel that is owned, operated, and used for official purposes by federal, state, or local government entity. or any vessel operating pursuant to a permit for a marine event that is requested by a federal, state, or local governmental entity. The Commission held a workshop on September 23rd, 2016, and no changes were recommended by the Commission. Chief Turnipseed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Chief Game Warden Tyler Turnipseed again for the record. As you said, we first heard this in a workshop forum in September, and at that meeting I gave a little bit of the background on where this regulation change or proposed regulation change came from. But for those that weren't here, I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. Essentially, this last spring, we had one day in Reno, the phone started ringing off the hook about a hovercraft that was racing up and down the Truckee River. Several people were offended by that and asked us, don't you have a law against that? We said no. We don't have anything prohibiting that. The Reno City Council took it up as an issue in response to noise complaints and safety complaints and all that sort of thing, and wanted to pass an ordinance, some sort of ordinance to prohibit it. But I went to one of their meetings and pointed out the fact that this body and this commission and NDOW are the only ones in Nevada who can make laws about boating and boating safety, or regulations about boating and boating safety, and told them that we already do have an NAC that talks about bodies of water on which only non-motorized vessels are allowed, those being Angel Lake, Blue Lake, and Marlette Lake. Second half talks about bodies of water on which only vessels with electric motors are allowed. So I told them if they really wanted to affect that change, this would be the vessel to do that, pun intended. And so they asked that we would move ahead with that regulation change. And then in that process, we contacted City of Sparks and Washoe County as well. They both agreed that they didn't think this hovercraft or any motorized boats were a method of recreation that agreed with all the other forms of recreation on the river. So we wrote it to include the Truckee River from the California-Nevada state line to the point where it enters the Pyramid Lake Indian Reservation as being a body of water on which no motorized vessels are allowed. While we were at it, we felt it would probably be appropriate to make broader the exceptions at the end for search and rescue type vehicles. Every year we have a couple drownings on the Truckee, as well as probably the potential for drownings at Angel or Blue Lake or Marlette Lake. I don't remember any of those, but that potential exists, so we wanted to expand those exemptions for public safety vehicles. You know, if somebody needed to put a boat on the water looking for a body or some sort of assist. That's the Reader's Digest version, and I'd stand for questions.
Thank you, Chief Turnipseed. Any questions? Commissioner Drew.
Chief Turnipseed, thank you for that. I think Washoe County had taken maybe some exception in their CAB meeting to the exemption, and I think you clarified it. I don't think the exemption is intended for City of Reno employees to run up and down the Truckee River on hoverboards when no one else can. I think it's intended for, as you said, emergency situations or flood events or things of that nature. I guess my question is, maybe you could reiterate that intent for me, and then also, do those entities actually have jurisdiction over that body of water? For instance, City of Reno, do they have jurisdiction of that reach of the river through the city?
You bet, Commissioner Drew, and you're exactly right. In subsection 3A, it says that they do not apply to a vessel that is owned, operated, and used for official purposes by, and it goes on to describe federal, state, or local governmental entity. In other words, an off-duty Reno fireman couldn't go put a motorized boat on the river just because, you know, he works for the city. But official purposes, like I said, in my mind, that would include search and rescue. You know, I suppose there's a scenario in which we could have someone drown tomorrow at Angel Lake, and we may want, you know, Elko County may want to put a motorized boat on that body of water, or us, Department of Wildlife, to assist, would, you know, probably want to put a motorized boat on that body of water, and without that exemption, theoretically would be in violation of the code. So we wanted to open that up to basically make an exception to the motorized vessel restriction for public safety type vessels.
Further questions from the Commission? Seeing none, I'll take it out to public comment in Las Vegas.
No comments in Las Vegas, thank you.
Thank you. Public comment in Carson City? Come on up, Rex.
Rex Flowers speaking for myself. I'm neither in favor or against this. Actually, I'm against regulation, but that's beside the point. Food for thought. This came about because one gentleman was going up and down the river on a hoverboard and was giving thought to opening up a business renting hoverboards on the river. I understand that at this point in time, he's no longer looking at doing that. But what if he moves that business to Rye Patch or to Lahontan Reservoir or to Washoe Lake? Do we come back again and make another amendment to this regulation so that we can exclude hoverboards? I mean, at what point? I think we need to think this through. It's not only the guy that wants to start a business, but an individual who owns a hoverboard that may want to do this activity. We're only looking at the river. There's a lot of other more nicer places to be running a hoverboard on water. And I believe that places like our outside lakes, Washoe Lake, Lahontan Reservoir, we would have a bigger impact on wildlife in those areas than we are on the river. Thank you.
Thank you, Rex. Further public comment in Carson City?
Karen Boger, board member, Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, Nevada chapter. I know that we've written to you on this issue the last time when you were workshopping it, and it is an issue that in general we nationally have great import. I mean, it's of great importance to us to assure that quiet hunting and fishing opportunities remain in, appropriate proportion. I am really kind of taken aback by Rex's statement because he does make a valid point. But we are in favor of this particular regulation just because, well, primarily because it's an opportunity to get ahead of a use that could potentially proliferate before it does and then becomes a grandfathered use. And as you all know, that is much more difficult to regulate at that time. And I think it's very important to assess just in general whatever new motorized, techno, wonderful playthings come along to be used on both on land and water, that we just take a step back and see, well, where is this appropriate? Is it appropriate in certain areas or not? And to that end, I would want to also submit to you that Montana BHA is taking a huge, broad look at this statewide, and that's more along the lines of what Rex is suggesting, and that is to look at all navigable waters in the state, both rivers and lakes, and have a large group of stakeholder interest, including their Department of Wildlife, have a look at what are the appropriate uses on those waters and which ones might be compatible, which ones aren't, definitely factoring in the impacts to wildlife and wildlife habitat. So it is a thought, although I hope just as a first step and statement, important statement, that you will seriously consider passing this regulation. Thank you.
Thank you. Next public comment in Carson City? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for action. Commissioner Valentine.
Tyler, can you jog my memory just a little bit? What was it, a noise issue that was the problem, or was it a safety issue that was a problem, or?
You bet, Commissioner Valentine, and I would say both. I think a lot of the people that own homes up and down the river objected to it from a noise standpoint. I think some of the fly fishermen and fly fishing guides objected to it from a conflicting with other users standpoint. The Parks and Recreation Board that discussed it for Washoe County talked a lot about people floating the river in the summertime, on tubes or rubber rafts and that sort of stuff, being a threat to those people. These hovercrafts, I suppose I should have maybe brought some video of them, but they're good sized 2 or 3 person boats that have the big fans, and they get up above the water and scoot along. They only draft a couple inches of water, so the gentleman that was going to open the business said that they can go over rocks and some of that sort of stuff. So there was some discussion about nesting birds, that kind of thing. So I think, in contrast to a Lahontan or a Rye Patch or a Washoe Lake, those kind of places, certainly people water ski and jet ski those places every day, and I doubt anyone would give a second look to a hovercraft other than the novelty of it. But the river specifically, I think people are worried about all the floaters in the summertime. If you look in the Truckee in July, there's hundreds of people floating down the river every day, and I think it was the conflicting with other uses was the main point.
Thank you.
Further questions? Commissioner Hubbs.
Today I think today was the first day, I don't think the first iteration that went through that we thought about all of the ramifications if we were to expand it. That was the first time it's come up, from my knowledge, where they wanted to expand it to other areas. And of course, then immediately I'm thinking, but we have boats in other areas and jet skis and all kinds of stuff going on on those waterways. So if we start to say, well, and for some particular reason, no hovercrafts, it would seem odd, I think, to a person wanting to do some boating or activities or recreation. My understanding was it was a safety issue with the density of that river running right through the city and having close quarters and a lot of the public in the water.
I think you're exactly right. Chief Game Warden Turnipseed again. I think you're exactly right, Commissioner Hubbs, is that, I don't think the issue is that it's a hovercraft necessarily, just, higher speed motorized boats up and down the Truckee. And I suspect the same public outcry would have come had it been a ski boat running up the river when, generally it wouldn't be enough water to do that. But on the times that there are, I suspect our phone would have rung off the hook as well with a ski boat or a jet ski or something going up the river.
Further questions or comments or a motion? Commissioner Drew.
I would move to approve Commission General Regulation 471, Truckee River Motorized Vessel Closure, LCB file number R139-16.
I have a motion by Commissioner Drew and a second by, I believe it was Commissioner Valentine, to approve Commission General Regulation 471 as presented. And I have a question from Commissioner.
I just want to make a quick comment. I don't want members of the public to think we're ignoring comments that were made, but this was an existing regulation where certain bodies of water, motorized craft, were not allowed. This regulation is just adding the Truckee River from the California line to Pyramid Lake because of this issue that presented. Perhaps at a future meeting, we could look at other issues in terms of other bodies of water if that is appropriate or the flavor of the chair.
Does anyone have any comments on that? No opinions? I have a motion on the table.
I was just going to say I agree with what he stated.
Okay. I have a motion on the table. I'll call for the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously, 9-0. Subitem C, Commission General Regulation 464 Appeals, LCB file number R074-16, APRPC Chairman and Commissioner David McNinch for possible action. The Commission will consider amending Chapter 501 of the Nevada Administrative Code. This regulation revises provisions relating to practice before the Commission. It provides more efficiency in scheduling appeals, will define that calendar days are used for calculation of deadlines, and more clearly notify the appellant in advance of a hearing that the Commission has limited jurisdiction. It also It will also provide for 2 separate attorneys general, one for the commission and one for the department, to avoid conflicts with one attorney advising 2 sides of the appeal. It also requires that the appellant give the agency advance notice of legal representation to improve scheduling for a separate lengthier time needed on agendas. These changes were approved at the May 12, 2016 meeting of the Wildlife Commission's APRPC, which included relevant suggestions from the public and legal counsel. The Commission held a workshop in Reno on August 12, 2016, where the Commission asked to include information regarding the notice to the appellant and also insert language that if a party fails to file certain information within 14 days, they may waive their right to a hearing on the appeal. A revision of the regulation was requested from the Legislative Counsel Bureau, which contained additional edits. Commissioner McNinch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you've got your paperwork. Again, this is part of our rules of practice, and as we were beginning the process of working through our amending or evaluating our policies for adoption, amendments or revisions and repeals, etc., we had a conversation, should we, if we're proposing changes to our policy, should we be addressing those through the Nevada Administrative Code? And the decision was made, yes, we should probably be doing that. So beginning early in the year, we began the conversation, how would we amend NAC to reflect our, to provide the clarifications that we're looking for with regards to the appeal process that are provided to folks that have been aggrieved by actions of the agency, of the department. The last meeting that we had as a committee was in May. The language was forwarded to LCB. That language has come back, and I think Chairman Wallace kind of gave a quick overview of the changes, and basically to provide some flexibility and more efficiency in the scheduling. So we're kind of addressing the calendar days, making some clarification there, and that if necessary, we'll hold a special meeting if we need to deal with appeals. These are due process rights that we have to be respectful of, and the time frames are a little more critical than in other aspects of what we deal with in here. And I'm mentioning that because I'm kind of comparing it to petitions. To avoid conflicts with one Attorney General, we would have 2 so that both the Commission and the Department could be represented. To clarify to appellants in advance of any hearings at the Commission that we have limited jurisdiction. Oftentimes we get people coming here looking for relief on things that we don't have the authority to provide relief on, such as convictions that they've had prior to coming here through the court system. So we want to make it so we provided provisions where we notify them that hey, if you've been convicted of a wildlife violation, that will not be reheard here. That's not something that can be done here. That has to go to a higher court if you want to appeal your conviction. If you're coming here, we're looking at process, validating that the department followed the proper procedures, and that procedurally there were no errors. And then lastly, requiring that if somebody's bringing their own legal representation, often that results in a little lengthier, this is not a slam on attorneys, Commissioner Hubbs and Johnston, but it often results in a little more time. People that understand the process know their rights. So when an attorney's retained, it's necessary for us to consider a little lengthy, a little longer period of time to work through that. So we're asking, the policy would state that the NAC would require that we be notified that they're bringing legal counsel so we could schedule accordingly. This is not a process that the public is involved with, so when we have our public hearings, people are obviously able to, but when we do those in conjunction with the Wildlife Commission meeting, we often end up with a room full of people that sit here until that is resolved. And we're trying to be a little bit respectful so we can say we're going to provide 3 or 4 hours for this procedure to occur instead of 1 or instead of 8 or whatever the case might be. So that's the gist of the changes. If anybody had any questions.
Commissioner Drew.
As I recall, when we last heard this, the two members of this body who have some legal background in DAG Ward had some revisions that they had made, and my assumption is that those got incorporated into here and we're comfortable with that, but I might like to hear from DAG Ward and our Commissioners Johnston and Hubbs.
Commissioner Hubbs.
I remember one of the issues I had, and I was just going back over this again, was I think we did change it. Basically, my only point is, and I don't even know if we made changes to it because I think it did say may before, but it was just the dismissing with prejudice. If they didn't have all their I's dotted, T's crossed, and or maybe we did change it. I think it was be dismissed with prejudice, and we put may in or something of that nature. That was my concern. But I know Vice Chairman Johnston had a couple points. I remember you actually wrote it down and read it back to record that needed to be made. And I'm trying to remember, do you remember what those were?
Commissioner Johnston.
I do. I believe that if you look on page 4, 501-153 subsection 2 is one of the things that we had talked about, and I asked, or that we had to have included, which is if the appellant fails to meet the requirements of the preceding subsection and what they're supposed to provide, and does not show good cause for the failure to meet those requirements, the commission may dismiss the appeal with prejudice. And I believe the additional language that came back either from the Deputy Attorney General at the time was the last sentence, that if the appeal was dismissed for that purpose or pursuant to this subsection, it was final for purposes of judicial review. So I don't have any further comments. I believe what I had commented on previously has been adequately addressed.
Commissioner Drew.
Yeah, I think what we got back is probably an update from LCB, meaning that they're comfortable with the language and whatever they added, and so long as we are on this end, I'm fine with that. DAG Ward, my assumption is you're comfortable with the draft before us today.
For the record, Harry Ward, yes, I am. And this is in consultation with, I think, Senior Deputy Attorney Newton that was really involved in it also. He's no longer with us, but I'm comfortable with it.
Anything further from the commission? Hearing none, I need to go out to public comment, don't I? All right, been a long day. Public comment in Las Vegas, please.
No comments in Las Vegas, thank you.
Public comment in Carson City. Hearing none, I'll bring it back to the commission.
Mr. Chairman, if there's no further discussion, I'd move to approve Commission General Regulation 464 Appeals, LCB file number R074-16 as presented.
Second. Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if I may, it's just been brought to my attention, there may be a discrepancy between the actual agenda item and the way that that was noticed. I think in the interest of safety, it would probably be wise to table this item and take it up at a future meeting.
Okay, thank you. Will the motion maker be amenable to retract his? I think we have to do that properly, right?
Yeah, obviously, I'm amenable to it.
That's fine.
Okay. Guess we will, we'll close this item with no action and move on to agenda item D. Commission General Regulation 465, Antelope and Elk Waiting Periods, LCB file R141-16, Management Analyst 3, Maureen Hollinger, for possible action. The Commission will consider amending Chapter 502 of the Nevada Administrative Code. The TAC Committee recommended the amendment to the regulation standardize a waiting period for a person to be eligible to apply for each of the species antelope and elk after receiving a tag. Regardless of harvest, the antelope waiting period received after a tag would be 3 years, and the antlered elk waiting period after receiving a tag would be 5 years. The Commission held a workshop on this regulation on September 23rd, 2016, and the Commission did not have any recommended changes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Vice Chairman Johnston.
In prior meetings, I've abstained from voting on this issue because I'm in the 10-year elk waiting period, and given Deputy Attorney General Ward's comments earlier today, I'll move out into the audience on this agenda item.
Okay. And while you're at that, I don't know who's going to run the meeting now, but I'm in the same waiting period for elk as well, so.
I think you have the authority, for the record, Deputy Attorney General Harry Ward, you have the authority to appoint someone.
Okay. Commissioner Drew, Chairman Drew.
First the penalty box, and now this. Ms. Hollinger, good afternoon.
Thank you, Temporary Chairman Drew.
Sorry, I just got to interject really quickly. I have a commissioner here next to me who wants to say something.
I'm also impacted by this because I'm part of, I may not be in the waiting pool, but I'm certainly in the antlered elk pool. So now.
Mr. McNinch.
I got to admit, this is not the first time this has happened over the years, because we all have huge conflicts at times with regards to decisions that we're making, because you just become eligible again. So from that standpoint, so I guess I'm questioning, is it, at some level, we could probably all excuse ourselves for some reason. The day that you come off of one of you comes off of the waiting period, you could probably make the argument, well, they're just participating now because they have a vested interest in this thing going a certain way so they can draw another tag. It just, I don't know.
I would agree with Commissioner McNinch. Dag Ward, I would ask for your direction. I don't believe this is a fiscal conflict of interest. Is this in fact a conflict of interest that the commissioners should feel obligated to dismiss themselves?
Harry Ward, Deputy Attorney General, for the record, and this will be a disclaimer, this is not an official AG's opinion, but I would say it would be up to the commissioner. If the commissioner feels that they have a conflict and they need to abstain, go ahead and do it. But you're right, this is not anything dealing with money or anything of that nature. It's going to be individualized up to the commissioner. If I feel, as a commissioner, that I only have, X amount of years left, or if it's going to influence me, then I should abstain from it. So it's going to be individualized. Because granted, this commission could obviously find some sort of, or the commissioners could find obviously some sort of conflict in almost anything you do on any action. So I would say it's going to be up to the individual commissioner. Do I feel that I need to abstain from this? And just put it on the record and abstain.
In that case, I would simply disclose that I have come off of my elk waiting period, so I don't have a conflict there. To be honest with you, I know I'm on an antelope waiting period, but I think it may have expired, so I may or may not have a conflict, but I'm comfortable proceeding whether I'm on that waiting period or not. I don't think it's going to change my judgment on this matter one way or the other. If anything, it's going to hurt my odds in the future. So anything else before we open it back up? All right. Ms. Hollinger, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Maureen Hellinger, Nevada Department of Wildlife. I'm here to present for action Commission General Regulation 465, LCB file number R14116, standardization of the antelope and elk waiting periods, as Commissioner and Chairman Grant Wallace indicated in the opening comments on the regulation. This is to alter the waiting periods for antelope to 3 years and antlered elk to 5 years. It was reviewed by the Tag Allocation and Application Hunt Committee, and what the language you have presented before you is what was determined. During that review, concerns were voiced regarding the increased number of clients who would become eligible for the draw if harvest waiting periods were reduced. Additionally, there were concerns voiced about hunters not harvesting animals because they could apply again sooner versus a longer wait if they took an animal. So it's standardization of the waiting period is believed by the TAC committee and the department to be effective means to better encourage hunters to harvest if given the opportunity, thus furthering the benefit the department's management goals. At the September 23rd and 24th commission meeting, the workshop was held. There was no additional changes made by the commission, but I would like to point out that I did have one additional change in section 1, subsection 1, to remove the word "and." That was inserted by LCB through this process, and it restricts the commission's ability at the annual regulation level on the application eligibility. And I don't believe that is the intent of this regulation. You should have that ability to be flexible should you want to allow hunters to apply for both buck and doe hunts for antelope. Leaving that in there does restrict that opportunity, and I presented that at that time. Also at this time, I'd like to point out that we are in a legislative session should it be determined that this is approved, we are at the mercy of the LCB Commission as to when it will be heard for and approved for effectiveness. Now, we've heard a whisper that there might be a December LCB Commission meeting. This may make it on that, but it could determine whether this would be effective. If we don't make it for 2017, it could end up in 18 to get this implemented. When we make these types of changes, we like to have those changes in the application brochure when it hits the streets in March. So I just wanted to make it known that we might have an implementation issue depending on the LCB Commission, because this won't be effective until they hear it. So with that said, I'll turn it back to the Commission.
Questions for Maureen? Any discussion before we throw it out to public comment? I would just state that I did get some correspondence on this item, folks that were a little bit concerned with cutting the wait for elk clear down to 5 years. I think I brought this up initially at the last meeting we had. I'm personally probably more comfortable at changing elk to 7 years. I just know in the 5 years I've been on this commission, we've made a concerted effort to try and get those populations down to objective, and in doing so, I think we may see a stagnation or even a decrease in the tags we offer in the future, and we've also put a lot of people on the 5-year waiting period. At the same time, there wasn't a lot of consternation from the County Advisory Board input or the public at the last meeting on cutting to 5. So just wanted to disclose that I did get 2 pieces of correspondence with concern over the going down to 5 years and suggesting that we go to 7. Something I'll consider as we take public comment. Any further discussion? Commissioner Valentine?
Chairman Droop, would that be a 7 and 7, or would it be a 7 and 5?
In my mind, no matter what we do, I think it should be standardized. I think that was the committee's main intent on moving this forward, was the standardization. Commissioner Hubbs?
Yeah, some of my concerns at the last meeting was that we really couldn't talk about what type of impact that might have on somebody's odds that are waiting. If we allow these individuals to come back into the pool, and there was never really a statement it was inferred that it may decrease the odds, that your wait would be longer. That was the inference I was reading. And I'll be interested to see what the CAB members have to say on this issue, and obviously give them deference. They're the ones that will have to live by this, the people who are out hunting. But I hear a lot that we should all, equal opportunity, and I just don't know if that starts to take away an opportunity if we make changes.
I would just respond to that by saying I think we have recognized that there will certainly be an impact to the people who aren't on a waiting period. It will increase their odds because there's going to be more applicants in the pool. I think quantifying what that would be is going to be next to impossible to define, but I think we will see that through the input. Commissioner Young?
Well, certainly changing the waiting periods will decrease the odds of those of us that have never drawn a tag in Nevada, and I have a lot of bonus points, never drawn one, purchased one, but never drawn one. So I think it was initially set at 10 years, and I think that we got to live with that. We should have thought of that beforehand, and I think there's far more people outside the pool that have never drawn an elk tag than there are that have and then are waiting, and I think it's kind of a, wait your turn type of situation for me, and it is the luck of the draw. And as your age increases, your chances decrease of drawing it, because there's another factor that goes into that math. And being on the far side of 60, I don't think my chances are increasing anytime soon. So I'm not going to vote for anything that changes the original. And I think there's a lot of people in that position.
Additional discussion by the the commission at this time? If not, I'll open it up. County Advisory Board input on item 26D, waiting periods for elk and antelope. Gil, come on up. If there's any other county advisory boards, if he'd come up and take a chair, we'll move through this quickly.
Gil Yannick, representing Carson Advisory Board. Our board voted to support the change to 3 for antelope and 5 for elk. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dixon.
Paul Dixon, Clark County. We had a fairly lively discussion about this. There were people that were concerned about if you didn't harvest, why you had to be put on a waiting period. But in the end, when we took a vote, the Clark County CAB passed supporting this regulation as presented.
Mr. McVickers, good afternoon.
Mitch McVickers, White Pine County. Our CAB was a 4-1. We had one member opposed to the new regulation, but we actually went a step further and said it should be a 10-year, whether you harvest or not, for elk, and 5 for antelope. We've had multiple times we've heard and found out that people have harvested an elk, took it home, and then on their return card said that they did not harvest. And so as the majority of our board, we felt it should just go to, if any change, 10 years, whether you harvest or not, so on the elk. But, thank you.
Any county advisory boards that I'm missing? Public comment in Carson City? Mr. Almberg, welcome to this side of the table.
Yes, I'm on the opposite. I was told I could at least make public comment. I did a little bit, I was trying to answer the question myself of what is going to be the ramifications of this, because it's going to be, it's big. Right now, I wanted to find out what's the average bonus point, where are those guys at in the bonus point system when they're drawn now, what's it going to be in the future? So I had some statistics. Actually, our statistics package that we got from system consultants had a chart of all these numbers in it, and so I took liberty of doing some math with them, and then also asked them to develop another list of the number of people coming back in the system, trying to balance where we've been, where we are, and where we're going to go. And if you look at the trend analysis with the number of applicants that are applying for these hunts, it's on a steady incline and has been for a long time. If you consider the tag the number of tags that we're giving, the populations are also increasing during the same time period. But as we've gone through the elk management plans, so many of these areas are getting at their caps. So the elk and the antelope, for a different reason, because of the low fawn recruitment, those numbers are stagnant. So we're going to continue in the next future, in the foreseeable future, of increasing demand, but not necessarily increasing supply. And we're messing with the system right now that does work. The bonus points, there was a lot of effort putting into the development of the bonus point program and the waiting period. And I think when we presented it to the cabs and everybody else, we asked them, well, do you want to get back in the pool sooner or later? And I think everybody's automatically going, sure, I'd like to, but I don't know that anybody understands the ramifications of that. And to me, without trying to look and really put our finger on what are those, right now I can just, my personal group of people, it takes around 10 to 12 bonus points to draw an elk tag. So if the system, if we're getting so many tags, then the system will actually already work because, again, more tags, there's going to be more people getting out of the system, so automatically it would work. When you get back into after the waiting period, you would draw in 4 years, or, in 4 years, so it would take 14 years. So it's actually already works to accommodate or account for the supply. So I would just, I would think that further information, better information that the cabs understand the real ramifications of a change would be beneficial so that everybody can wrap their head around the consequences of it. Thanks.
Next public comment in Carson City. Please state your name for the record.
Jake Chattel, board member, MBU Reno. We came to the conclusion as a board that we do support the standardization of wait periods. The one change we would like to see is elk go from 5 to 7, as you guys stated, both so that we can kind of scale into it and feel the effects of the change, and also to reduce the dilution of those odds for people that already do have an accumulation of points. That's it.
So, Mr. Chattel, while you're there, NBU's comfortable with the standardization of antelope to 3 years?
Yes, sir.
And they're recommending 7 for elk?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next public comment in Carson City. Mr. Flowers?
Rex Flowers. I sit on the TAC committee, and I voted to get it out of the TAC committee so that the public could make a decision. This came forward once from a county advisory board. I'm not sure who it was originally. And then it came back forward about a year ago from Washoe County. I really don't support moving down the elk eligibility. I've heard from others, they would rather see it, the 5 become a 7 or a 10 than the 10 become a 5. My greatest concern, though, is really for archery antelope. When you look at the archery antelope, there's generally around 900 applicants per 450 tags. Only 100 people are successful every year. Right now, those other 350 individuals can reapply the following year. Well, with this new situation, they won't be able to reapply, so your 900 will become 550. And as you know, the division, the setup for allocation of tags is by supply and demand. And what we're going to do is, through this process, there'll be no demand for archery antelope, and we will end that hunt or minimize it to where it's not worth its time. Thank you.
Next public comment in Carson City. Mr. Johnson, I'm going to have you come up anyway in case there's question, because I know you sat as a committee chairman, so maybe you can enlighten us on the committee's position and remind us in some of the discussions you've had.
Well, that's why, Mr. Chairman, I approached or came up is just a lot of the driving force between the TAC coming forward with the proposed waiting period of 5 years for those successful in bull elk hunt was uniformity. And I think that is the driving force. We could have gone 7 and 7 or moved the unsuccessful hunter to 10, but I think there was recognition that uniformity was important because of how that may impact behavior in the field. I don't know if we ever got into the nuts and bolts of the impact of a 3-year waiting period for an unsuccessful antelope archery hunter. I hear Mr. Flowers' point. I suspect that we are focused more on any legal weapon hunt for antelope and having a uniform waiting period on that and shortening the current 5-year to 3 and making a waiting period apply for those who are not successful. So whatever the flavor of the commission is on that, I think the focus was uniformity more on any legal weapon antelope hunt and not deep consideration. I don't recall any consideration. Perhaps Mr. Flowers brought it up, I don't recall, on the archery season. So I just wanted to address that.
Questions for Mr. Johnston, since he does serve as the committee chair by the commission, before I let him go? Okay, you're off the hook. Back to the penalty box. Next public comment, Ms. Karen, I think you had one.
Judy Karen for the record. We didn't have this on our agenda at the Washoe County Advisory Board, so that's probably why you don't have anything in your notes, but I would like to speak to it. Elk, I believe we should leave the same, 5 and 10. We did talk about it years past, and I just feel people make a choice. Don't want to bring it up again, but we also make a choice about our behavior in the field if it's with a wildlife contest. So when we wait 18 years, some of us, to get our first elk tag, if we choose to harvest or don't have the opportunity, you know, we take that responsibility if we're going to come home with a 5 or a 10-year wait. As for antelope, I won't repeat what Rex said, but we had that discussion, and I agree wholeheartedly. He said it excellently. We're going to have a problem with our archery hunters for the 3 years sitting out, that demand success ratio is going to go down. As I have gotten older, realize, and I like to see the opportunity for people who hunt, especially in my age group, 60 and above. Our two opportunities are deer and antelope, usually, to draw a tag. It gets harder and harder every year to get a deer tag. That I think, oh, Hail Mary, full of grace, maybe I'll draw an antelope tag. And I'm going to be very honest. I have been very lucky. I have 5 antelope tags. My husband's mounted all 5 of them. Regardless, we don't need another antelope mounted on our wall. But that is the hunt I love, and I think it gives me the opportunity that if I don't draw a deer tag or whatever, I can take the time to enjoy our resources, our wildlife, to be in the field, and I don't have to pull the trigger because maybe I'll get to go again next year if I don't find something that I truly want. We do eat the meat, so it's not an issue, but it just seems, for those 60 and above, it gives me 2 opportunities, I feel, to draw a tag to enjoy Nevada's natural resources. If you do think it's something that we do need to look at, that we're bringing more people into the field, possibly that's one of the driving forces for this 3-year wait on antelope. Our antelope numbers are going up. Our tags have increased. I asked for an exemption for 65 years and older, that we don't have a 3-year wait. Thanks.
Next public comment in Carson City. Seeing none, public comment in Las Vegas.
No comment in Las Vegas, thank you.
Hearing none, I'll bring it back to the commission. Ms. Hollinger, was there anything you'd like to add?
Commissioner Drew, if there is discussion on the 7-year option, I will have some comments in regards to that.
I think let's get them on the table right now before we get into discussion. Did you have input on the 7 years?
You were talking to, okay.
Yep, go ahead.
Excuse me, I was waiting for the other comments. Should the discussion go into a 7-year standardized wait, much like what we did years ago in regards to bighorn sheep when we went from 5 to 10 to 10, those that are in the lower end of the no harvest are grandfathered in, and that's the comment I wanted to say, is that we are not going to, when we implemented that change, we grandfathered them in. They would still stay at the 5-year wait. We weren't going to increase their wait to 7, in this case for the elk. They would come back into the pool after their 5 years when they apply in their 6, and that's how we handled the sheep at that time when we went to the flat 10. So I wanted to make that apparent when it comes to implementing, if that's where the commission goes with the regulation.
Questions for Maureen? Commissioner Hobbs?
So I'm trying to follow you, Maureen. I thought we were, when you're saying, so your example to me was of a situation in which we were doing the reverse, meaning our waiting period was increasing, is that right? Whereas here, we're actually decreasing the waiting period.
Commissioner Hubbs, currently there's 2 types of waiting periods. There's a waiting period for no harvest, and there's a waiting period if you harvest. And this proposal is standardizing that waiting period regardless of harvest to a time frame. So with the antelope going, right now it is If you don't harvest, you can apply in the following year for another tag. If you harvest, you have to wait 5 years. It's standardizing at 3, so those that don't harvest going forward, if it was implemented, that tag being issued and they don't take, they would have to wait 3 years and apply in the 4th. And those that do take would wait 3 years and apply in the 4th with the change. With the elk, similar, the waiting period for no harvest is already at 5 years. It's bringing the harvest down to a 5-year wait, applying the 6th, and those people would be coming back into the pool sooner. I hope that it answered your question.
So essentially, those on the 5-year wait, if we went to 10, they're going to remain on the 5-year wait. They're grandfathered in as to when they didn't harvest or chose not to harvest.
That is how we handled it for the sheep when we did make that change.
Okay.
And I would recommend that we do that again.
I would agree. Commissioner Valentine and then Commissioner Young.
Maureen, I don't want to age myself here, but I'm going to anyway ask the question. At one point in time, regarding archery antelope, it seems like if you were in the waiting period, you had the ability to apply for archery antelope during that waiting period. Is that correct?
There was a time where the eligibility and waiting period was different for the weapon type for antelope, and archery was handled differently. You could apply the following year if you had an archery tag. Where the change occurred is that they brought any legal weapon into that same framework and standardize it in the fashion that there was, if you didn't harvest, you could apply the following year regardless of weapon type, and if you did, it was a 5-year wait. But at one point for antelope, they were handled differently if there was no harvest for archery.
Commissioner Young.
Maureen, I just want to make sure I got this right. So you said at the last statement that if you were already on, and we're talking about elk here, if you're already on the 5-year wait because you chose not to harvest, and they were to standardize this at, is it 7 or 5? For both those that harvested and those that did not harvest. What I'm trying to get at is I don't want to, lack of a better term, screw those that have already in that pool, because they made that decision based on the information that we gave them. But by the same token, those of us that have never drawn, and you lower the 10-year wait, folks, going forward to 5 years, does that not change our odds, decrease our odds going forward once they hit that 5-year block? So say if I live to 66, I'm 60 years old now, say I live to 65, and I'm still feeling like I can hunt, does that change that applicants or decrease their odds going forward?
Maureen Hollinger, for the record, I can't speak to the odds, but it does bring more people into the pool. The odds are based on how they apply, so depending on whether they use 1 choice, 5 choices, or whatever. But in a 30,000-foot view, those people would be coming back into the pool to be eligible to apply, should they choose to.
Yeah, so in what you're saying, if they apply, if we, all things being equal, we made the same application for the same areas, it would decrease my odds or that applicant's odds. And I think that's what is somewhat troubling to me, is that you're penalizing somebody based on the new idea, and I don't want to say rewarding, but giving them more of a chance to draw.
Additional questions? All right, just from a standpoint of time, I believe we have 4 commissioners who have a plane to catch at 5 o'clock. 5? So what time do we need to leave is my first question. I think we're getting dangerously close to that time. Yeah, like 2 minutes ago. So here's my question. Do we push this, is the commission that I have left comfortable pushing this through today with the information we have and getting it done in the next couple of minutes? Or would we like to table this, understanding that if we table it, there's no way it's going to be in place for this coming spring's draw, I don't believe. Is that an accurate statement, Ms. Hollinger?
Considering I don't know if we have a legislative commission calendar, it could be accurate, yes.
So my question is, do we want to rush and make a motion and move this today, or do we want to table it for the 5 remaining commissioners I have left?
Have we gotten all the comment, Mr. Chairman, from everybody?
I think so. The only comment left is mine, so. Commissioner Barnes?
I guess in regards to your question, I think I pretty well have my mind made up.
Okay. All right, then here's my statement, and we'll see if we can get this knocked out. I guess my statement would be that I understand, Bill, where you're coming from as someone who's off the weight and has never drawn an elk tag in Nevada. I'm in the same boat. I would personally be comfortable going to a 5-year wait, understanding that's going to have negative ramifications on my ability to draw. I have a lot less problem going to 7 just because I think it tempers that a little bit for the folks who haven't. I really don't have that big of a concern on antelope. If we go to 3 and 3 and standardize it and we lose some archery hunters, those tags will get redistributed or they'll get picked up potentially in a second draw. And if we need to change something down the road, that's why this body exists. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm comfortable with the regulation as it reads. I would probably be a little bit more comfortable with the 7-year wait standardized on the elk, but that's just my take. Any further discussion before I entertain a motion? Commissioner Barnes.
I guess I should have clarified more when I had my mind made up. The policy that's been in place, in my mind, over the years has seemed to work just fine. Kind of where we're going, I don't see any need to change. I would be happy leaving it the way it was before the proposal.
I guess my only response to that is just on its face and take years out of it. I think it's preposterous that our elk and our bighorn tags are the same waiting period. It just blows my mind, given the difficulty and how different that is to draw, and given the